Hello, friends. Today we're going over the definition of undue influence. I'm so excited. First of all, influence is normal. We all have a certain level of influence over another person. Motivation and inspiration are influential. When you see a doctor or you're learning from a teacher, there's influence everywhere. It's not a bad thing to be influenced or to be influential. Influence becomes dangerous when it involves the misuse of a position of power or trust to exploit another person's vulnerability, influencing that person to act differently than they would have done otherwise, or to make decisions that do not reflect their independent will. Undue influence uses psychological tactics to quietly substitute their will for yours. Your intuition, your decision making are all essentially replaced with their own agenda. And you are led to believe that you are making your own independent choices. But the reality is that your options have been carefully prearranged for you. Undue influence targets your identity, rewrites your values, your desires, and your thoughts until you're no longer acting in your own best interest but in theirs. And to really understand undue influence, it helps to remember that while coercive control restricts what you're allowed to do, undue influence targets how you think. They systematically restructure your beliefs, your desires, and your identity to match their agenda. They do this so pervasively, you will believe that you're the one making the decisions. And when a manipulator uses undue influence, they aren't necessarily threatening you. No. Instead, they are rewriting your values so that you willingly choose what they want you to choose. So, an example from my personal life was after my ex and I transitioned from being after my ex transitioned from being a father figure that I called my dad to being my husband, I started to find myself wanting to homeschool, be a stay-at-home mom, give him a daughter that he always wanted, and give up the idea of going to university, which was huge for me because I've been wanting to be a clinical psychologist since I was 8 years old. And I truly felt at the time I was making these decisions from a place of empowerment, but in reality, it was him empowering me to make them. I ended up getting caught in a cage that was nearly impossible to leave. I'm really grateful to be alive. So, how does a person change their values and beliefs so rapidly? It happens through a very specific psychological process. And don't worry, we'll be going deeper into all of these tactics later on in the course. So, first, your critical mind is the part of you that asks questions, checks for red flags, and keeps you safe. Undue influence works by quietly subduing your critical thinking. They do this by mirroring your deepest desires, offering intense validation, or using hypnotic language that relaxes your guard. They focus on your situational vulnerabilities, like if you're going through a hard time or looking for a community. They want to fill those needs for you, and they want to make you feel completely safe with them so you stop questioning their underlying motives. Once you've let your guard down, they want you to start doubting yourself. And it begins so gently that you might mistake it for a profound connection, and it might even feel really empowering. It doesn't start with aggressive gaslighting or shouting matches, no. It starts by positioning them as the ultimate authority on you. They become the person who claims to see your highest potential, your blind spots, or your deep spiritual blocks clearer than anyone else. They might gently point out a habit or a reaction of yours and reframe it for you, saying things like, I notice you get defensive when we talk about your goals. I think your fear of success is holding you back. And it's delivered with so much warmth and apparent insight that you accept it. Can you see how it almost sounds positive? It's not. It's definitely not. Because the reality is that they're trying to lower your defenses so that in the future they could easily gaslight you in such a way you actually believe every word they say. And slowly you begin to run your thoughts, feelings, and boundaries through their filter before you trust your own. You start pausing before making a choice, thinking, what would they say about this? Or is this my genuine intuition, or is it just my unhealed ego, like they mentioned? Without a single overt attack, they have quietly introduced a wedge between you and your values. You aren't being forced to surrender. You are being gently conditioned to believe that their perception of your reality is much more accurate, grounded, and safe than your own. And once your trust in yourself is broken, a vacuum is created. You naturally look for someone else to tell you what is real, what is good, and what is safe. You start going to them for all of this, for all of your needs. And ideally, they want you to become dependent on them or their ideology. So this is when they start using intermittent reinforcement, where sometimes they are praising you and sometimes they are cold and distant with you. And this creates a dopamine trigger in your brain. So you become chemically addicted in your body to their affection. This is some really heavy stuff. And next, this is the last phase, is the creation of a second identity. Their version of who they want you to be. It's like a pseudo identity that is built entirely to serve their agenda. This new persona swallows your authentic self. You start to think, in their words, value only what they value and police your own boundaries to keep them happy. And the craziest part about this is that you feel it's genuine. You feel that you're the one in control. The ultimate goal of undue influence, they no longer have to control you because your new pseudo identity is doing the job for them. You are keeping yourself in the cage and you believe that's a good thing. So we're going to go much deeper into each of these steps throughout the course, but this architecture doesn't just live in giant organizations or extreme cults. The mechanics are identical, whether it's happening in an online community, a corporate office, a friend group, or right on your living room couch. Let's look at what this looks like in everyday life. Here are some examples I have for you. So in a romantic relationship, it can look like a partner who subtly discourages you from taking a job promotion because it will take away from your special time together. They don't forbid you from taking it. Instead, they manipulate the narrative and bypass your critical mind so thoroughly that you decline the job, genuinely believing it was your own organic idea because you want that sacred time is so important to you, and you don't want to disappoint them because then they'll go cold on you. That it's essentially your idea. I hope I'm explaining that right. In an online community or coaching space, it can look like an influencer or a mentor that tells you that if you question their methods, it's just your ego resisting growth or your shadow is acting out. They have successfully substituted their authority for your own critical thinking. If you doubt them, you've been trained to blame yourself. There are hundreds of thousands of communities on social media that are basically cults, and so much spiritual information out there comes from cult leaders. And it's literally everywhere. It drives me insane. I see it everywhere. So in a friendship dynamic, it can look like a new group of friends who will love bomb you, calling you their soul sister. But the moment you grab coffee with someone outside the group, the leader says, "We feel like that person has heavy toxic energy, and it hurts that you bring them back to our space." Slowly, you start cutting off everyone else. Your entire belonging becomes dependent on their approval, and you completely alter your dress, speech, and opinions just to protect your status as an insider. Guess what they charge for this, too? A lot sometimes. A lot of money. So that's these two big things. They're so huge. Please be careful of these two big things. Another example comes from looking at family dynamics. A parent treats you like their absolute best friend, telling you you're the only one who truly understands me. But as you try to build an independent adult life, they drop heavy guilt, saying, "You've become so cold and selfish." To prove you are still good, you start canceling dates and checking in constantly. You swallow your own anger and boundaries, entirely living in a caretaker pseudo identity while telling yourself, "I'm just doing this because I'm a good child." I actually know somebody who's been through this. And it's just looking back from an observer point of view on all of these different things now that you have the knowledge. It's so wild how you just see it everywhere. You'll start seeing this everywhere. It can show up in the workplace. Like, here's another example. A CEO inspires you by saying, "We aren't just a business, we are a family changing the world." So you drop your guard and happily work late nights for the mission, right? But when you request a weekend off for a family wedding, your manager says, "Taking off right now feels like you're letting the team down." And you feel deeply guilty, cancel your trip, and eventually become the ultimate company man, bragging about sleep deprivation and policing others for leaving at 5 p.m., fully believing you are thriving, while your personal identity has been completely swallowed. In every single one of these scenarios, the underlying machine is doing the exact same thing. It is training you to stop trusting yourself and to put all of your trust completely in their hands. So now that we have a solid understanding of how undue influence rewrites how we think, let's look at coercive control and look at how manipulators systematically restrict exactly what you're allowed to do, and also like why we let them. So thank you for being here. I'm so excited. I love sharing this information, and honestly, it feels empowering in so many ways. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.